everybody. I'm Lisa Wincham. I'm the Executive Director of NAMI Connecticut. I am beyond thrilled with the turnout for this evening's program. We are so happy to have all of our volunteer program leaders on this call with us, and so many of you have RSVP'd, and that is wonderful and exciting for the team here at NAMI Connecticut. You know, NAMI Connecticut was one of the first affiliates in the country to start bringing program online in March in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. And over the last several months, it's hard to believe we're coming up on a year almost, NAMI Connecticut and NAMI state offices and NAMI affiliates around the country have learned a great deal about online programming and online education and support groups and how we do things in the different situations we all have to cope with. And NAMI has taken that collective wisdom and put it into a training program for all of our program leaders. And I am delighted that the NAMI staff has taken that program and turned it into a training that we could all be together for, to make sure that we're all on the same page about emergency policies and procedures for our support groups and our education programs online. Because as we know, the online programming is going to be continuing for the foreseeable future. And with that, I am going to turn it over to NAMI Connecticut's Program Director, Iris Alamo, to introduce the training and our training team.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to see so many people on here. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. As Lisa stated, now that we have moved to offering all of our NAMI classes and support groups and trainings online and presentations, there's many opportunities for learning and growth. And one of those opportunities is how to respond to emergencies in online programs. Emergency response looks different online, and if not handled well, it could be a problem and a stressor for you as program leaders and also for the participants. Having an effective response protocol is at the core of delivering quality online programs. As program leaders, we want to respond appropriately to your needs and to the participants' needs. So that's why we're here today. There's a couple of things that I know that since we've moved online, things have been a little bit different. In-person support groups and trainings and classes usually, well, they're required to have 2 people per support group, 2 people per training. We recommend a producer per training, so you can have like the people who are putting on the training plus somebody in the background doing things for you. That's a really high suggestion. And then we know that leading online, it is different than in person because it's lack of the physical feedback. So we want you guys to, if you haven't had a chance to do a class online or program online, we want you to be able to take any trainings that we're offering so you can move in that direction. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to use the different features in Zoom, maybe the chat feature, and when you guys are doing a class, how to communicate with each other if you didn't want to do it in front of the group, especially if there's an emergency. We also want you to be able to handle if you have to update like in-person activities. For example, things that you would do hands-on in a class or a training, how would that look different if you had to modify it for online? Would you continue to do it? Would you not? Some of the other things we'll talk about here is like, we want you to get familiar with all the other features as well. How to remove trollers, how to use breakout rooms, polls, answering questions, how to mute participants, how to turn cameras on and off. So again, if you haven't done it yet, we suggest that you take trainings to do it. And if you're planning on doing one, practice, practice, practice is the key. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Valerie, who is our Manager of Peer Initiatives, Education and Training, and also Paul Brainerd, who is the Education and Family Support Group Coordinator.
Good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see so many friendly faces and having such a great turnout for tonight. Tonight's biggest 2 topics that we're going to focus on involves emergency response. and traumatic loss. We know that time is precious, so we will do our best to be diligent and quick as possible with getting the information out. And if you have any questions tonight that we weren't able to cover in the training, we'll be able to respond through email and also follow up as well. I'm going to turn it over to Paul. And I'm also letting you know that we will be monitoring the chat during the training tonight. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, but we will address them at the end of the training.
Thank you, Valerie. Yeah, so glad to be here with everyone. Yeah, I'm just amazed at the turnout. I mean, it's really great. And this is one of those times I wish we could all meet in person because there's such a great group here. And you can always feel the energy in a crowd, but that's not the case today. But the reality is like Lisa told us, we've got a, whatever happens in the future with NAMI, online is always going to be a part of our, and it's an added bonus, something we can implement with the programs we have now when we go back to normal living at some point in our future. So we've kind of just, NAMI's caught up and we've caught up with the things we need to do. And, you know, as you sort through this, you find out we're doing this online, the important things we need to do in the training. And one of the ones they did, we're going to basically present a slideshow for you here. It's going to come up. It's going to be short and sweet. Well, yeah, there you go. And we're going to show you 2 videos that are going to come forward on it. These are about NAMI Connections Emergency Response Training. And there's going to be 2 videos that are going to be with this. There's going to be one video that's explicitly for emergency response, how we're going to handle those when we're online. And the second one is we're going to handle the disruptive behavior. So the goals here today, you can see here on the points, handling emergencies. Guys, my screen's here blocking here, Val, there we go. So handling emergencies in online NAMI programming, understanding traumatic loss, and handling disruptive behavior online. Okay. And next slide, Val. Okay, so we're going to, okay, so we're coming to 2 videos here. This one's an 8-minute video. If you just bear with us, we're going to do this, and then I'm going to kind of recap this for us briefly and just go over again the points that were in this in a broader sense. And then we're going to go to the second video. This is one about emergencies. The second one will be about disruptive behavior. And then at the end, we're going to have a question and answer session. So we're going to cover this. So here's our first one. This is about an 8.5 minute for emergencies online.
Hello, and welcome to Handling Emergencies in Online NAMI Programming. This video defines what is and is not an emergency during online NAMI programming and provides the appropriate steps to respond to an emergency. Preparation is the key to safe and efficient emergency responses. Before offering any NAMI programming online, review your NSO/NA Emergency Response Protocols for Online Programming. The Emergency Response in Online NAMI Programs Guide can be used to develop or adapt your existing protocols. Meet with your online program team, the 2 program leaders and producer, and thoroughly review the guide listed above together. Discuss with your team how you'll handle emergencies before your online programs start, using the guide as a basis for the discussion. Keep in mind that your protocols may vary depending on the program you're offering. NAMI support groups have traditionally required the strongest emergency response protocols, but you may apply the same approach to classes and presentations. Before each online program begins, your team should have all the following information on file and easily accessible for each participant: the participant's phone number, the participant's physical address, the phone numbers for the mobile crisis units, known as MCUs, in the county of the participant's physical address, if available. Please note, not all counties have an MCU. You must research if one exists in your participant's county before the program begins. The name and phone number of the participant's emergency contact persons. Prep breakout rooms before the meeting begins. When setting up each new meeting, the producer should create at least one breakout room to be used in emergency situations. It's beneficial for your team to practice using breakout rooms before the program begins. For example, the producer might practice pulling the program leaders in and out of the breakout room so that the team is familiar with this process. Is it an emergency or a tough topic? It's not always straightforward. When you're assessing whether something is an emergency, first ask yourself, is there immediate physical danger? This danger could be due to a medical emergency or a participant making threats. If the answer is yes, then this is an emergency that requires immediate attention. Calling 911 is the appropriate response in this scenario. When calling 911, program leaders should review the detailed steps on pages 5 and 6 of the Emergency Responses in Online NAMI Programs Guide. Program leaders can also refer to NAMI's Navigating a Mental Health Crisis Guide for more specifics on interacting with 911 and first responders. If there is no immediate physical danger, but the participant is extremely distressed, there are several ways to address the situation. If you're in a support group, first use the hot potatoes process and/or the emergency procedures flowchart. If you're in a class, strategies like emotional stages or predictable emotional responses are more appropriate. In a NAMI family-to-family class, program leaders should use the tough topics process. If you have worked through the hot potatoes, tough topics, emotional stages process, and the participant is still distressed, you will need to ensure the participant is safe by asking them about suicidal thoughts to assess if a mental health emergency exists. Note, a program leader will have to ask the participant this question in front of the group. There are several possible scenarios where you are assessing if something is a mental health emergency. If the individual denies suicidal thoughts, one program leader should ask permission to speak with the participant privately in a breakout room while the co-presenter continues to lead the program. If the participant gives their permission, the program leader should provide emotional support and follow-up plans, for example, local crisis resources, contact with a support person. If the individual expresses suicidal thoughts and does not have a plan, means, and time frame, give the same support mentioned in number 1. If the individual expresses suicidal thoughts and has a plan, means, and time frame to carry them out, then this is a mental health emergency. If the individual expresses suicidal thoughts and logs off abruptly, program leaders should treat this as a mental health emergency. If the situation is a mental health emergency, use the following steps to respond. The first step to respond to a mental health emergency is for one of the program leaders to contact the participant's emergency contact person. First, the producer should pull one of the program leaders and the participant into a breakout room. The producer may also be asked to make the call to the participant's emergency contact if the program leader is speaking with the participant. If pulling the program leader and participant into a breakout room isn't possible, the program leader should ask the participant if they may call the participant and then continue the debrief over the phone. Please note, if the participant hangs up or logs off, call the emergency contact. During this one-on-one session, the program leader should tell the participant that they are also going to call the participant's emergency contact person. When the program leader connects with the participant's emergency contact person, they should explain the situation and ask for actionable next steps. Potential actionable next steps could include redirecting the participant to crisis services and/or connecting them to emotional support people. Program leaders can find an example script to use in this situation on page 3 of the Emergency Response in Online NAMI Program document. As a best practice, your NAMI state organization or affiliate should have a directory of crisis services and hotlines to send to participants, for example, via email during registration, and this should also be offered to the emergency contact. Best practices for calling emergency contact people is to call once and leave a voicemail if the emergency contact does not pick up. Then call again and leave a text indicating that the participant is experiencing a mental health crisis and that you may call a mobile crisis unit or 911 if you cannot connect the participant to other means of support. Important. The participant's emergency contact must be with the participant, or the participant must be connected to crisis services before the program leader can relent. Until one of these things happen, program leaders must stay with the participant in distress to connect them with their emergency contact or crisis services. If you are unable to connect with the participant's emergency contact person, the second step to respond to a mental health crisis, call the Mobile Crisis Unit, MCU, in the participant's community if one exists. Be as detailed as possible about the mental health emergency. Wait online with the attendee until the MCU arrives, keeping in mind that this may be for an extended period. The producer or the program leader should continue calling or texting the emergency contact person to keep them updated. Before we close out this video, we wanted to let you know that the NAMI team has provided you with a summary sheet of helpful tips and information included in this video. Please check out the Emergency Response and Online NAMI Programs Guide located in NAMINet and linked on this page. We hope that this video has helped you to create emergency response protocols that feel effective and appropriate. Should you have any questions, please contact the NAMI education team. Thank you for your time and effort in making online NAMI programs a place of safety and support for those impacted by mental health conditions.
Well, great. There you have it. So the first thing I want to emphasize to each of you is that we're going to put this online. You know, we've NAMI Connecticut has a YouTube private account, and we're going to have this this actual seminar right here we're doing today online. After we're done, we're going to publish it. So it's there for review for anybody. It'll be in a webinar style. And actually, the more you guys participate there and the questions you ask at the end of this, they'll all be on there too to help others. So whatever you want to do to participate there will be very effective. So just to recap briefly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Val before we go on to the next video. We saw here that this is about really about emergencies and how we respond to them and how we determine what is an emergency. And as they highlighted, it's the most important thing we can do is preparation, number one, without a doubt. And that is making sure we get all those contact information for those individuals that are in attendance, all the contact information for them, and that we're going to be able to know where, if we have an MCU unit in that county where we're at, that we'll be able to deal with that also. And I want to share you too that all these things they talk about, like the protocols you're going to follow, whether it's the emergency response program guide, we're going to supply all that for you. We've got that all together. We're going to give you a place where you can download that and use those too. I'd recommend actually that you print those out and have a hard copy, because you know you have your computer there and you don't want to be fooling with I mean, there's nothing like pulling up a piece of paper still and having that right in front of you so you can have those things available for reference. So print those out and have a copy also laying there right there, and you'll be very familiar with them. So the other things you want to do is practice setting up the breakout room was one of the other things they highlighted on that. And again, if you don't know, we'll come in with you and help you do that a few times. We'll show you how to do it, because that's where you need to be able to continue with your meeting, and maybe need to move somebody in there, and that's determining that. So again, looking at this and find out what is it that makes it where it's a danger right now, where it's an emergency we have to handle right now, 911 style, is if there's immediate physical danger. And while they can outline a lot of this stuff, I think one of the important things too that we should highlight is you don't know a lot of these people that are in here, and you develop a rapport with them, and you can tell what's going on with them, and things aren't right, it sends up the radar for you. So never forget to use that, your intuition and your gut, because that'll always tell you a lot. But going to these, when you're going to use an emergency, you know, they talked about some of these processes, and Val's going to go into these more, whether whether you're trying to sort this out with the person, and you want to use that emergency procedure flow chart they threw up, or the emotional stages of predictability with the person. And you may need to ask them right there. Like they said, ideally you don't want to ask them that, but if they're having suicidal thoughts or something and they have a plan, they're wanting to act on it, that's a whole different ball game. Now, if somebody just talks about they've thought about suicide, I don't, that's another thing you got to feel out in a different way, and maybe where you want to take somebody into a breakout room, and then you want to contact their emergency contact. And remember, we always want to do a warm handoff on that. We want to try to get somebody to give a warm handoff to them. We just don't want to talk to them for a while and let them go on the cold. And the other thing, of course, is if they hang up on you, all of a sudden they're talking, that sends up a flag. We want to get to that emergency contact right away, or we know their address and we can call 911 if we have to send somebody over there. So these are all things we want to focus on in this particular instance with emergencies, and what the distinguishing in is one that's really a physical danger and we need to act on it, and the other ones we can handle until we can get a family member or someone involved and get them in a breakout room and hold it off till they get there. And then of course just responding to those in the right way is what's going to make this turn out to have a good ending for us. So that's what we want to strive for in these. So Val, do you want to elaborate on those some of the points we made with the
Yes, so I just launched a poll. I'll give you all a couple more seconds to finish answering what your thoughts are. But we asked like what's considered an emergency. So we're going to test your knowledge. So we'll give you one more second. I see that 45% of people voted. So come on, let's get 100%. All right, I'm going to close the poll now. So some of the top answers were if someone is making serious threats and if someone has a seizure. Yes, those are both considered emergencies, mainly because if they're in immediate physical danger. Now, as Paula mentioned, and even in the video, if someone's talking about suicide, it might be a mental health crisis, but we don't necessarily know if it's an emergency yet. And then if someone is hearing voices, not necessarily an emergency. Many people hear voices all the time, but they're not in distress. If they're in significant distress, then we have to revisit that question. So for some other tips about handling an emergency response, we are going to be providing that navigating an emergency mental health crisis, I should say, through NAMI National. It'll be in English and in Spanish. And we will send out again the response from NAMI National. Some tips about asking the question about suicide. We do offer at NAMI Connecticut a QPR session. It's question, persuade, refer. It's a gatekeeper training for suicide prevention. I highly recommend taking it, and it helps you understand more about how to really ask that question about suicide. But some things you should always be clear about when it comes to asking the question is to be very direct. If you ask somebody, are you thinking about hurting yourself? That doesn't necessarily mean, are you thinking about killing yourself? We try to use person first language when we talk about suicide, and we try to show empathy and compassion. So be mindful of your feelings towards that topic and your views towards suicide, and always be very direct in a way that when you're asking, you say things like, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? If you ask, you're not thinking about suicide, are you? It can shut down the conversation and people might feel like they can't openly talk about it. And if you say something like, you're not thinking about doing anything stupid, do you think so? That can also shut down the conversation. So just some couple things to be mindful about when asking. And once again, we will be offering QPR trainings again this year. And this is a more of an opportunity to dive deeper into asking the question. We do have more resources for you as well. Some tips and tricks on how to take care of yourself. Self-care is huge. So after an emergency, this is a really great time to talk with your co-leader, check in, ask, did it feel safe asking those questions? Was it inclusive? Was the person in the emergency being able to direct the conversation on what they needed to get their needs met? The emergency contact person is somebody that they consider their go-to person. So it might not be a family member, it might be a friend, it could be a colleague, but we have to honor whoever that person is for their emergency response. And then also being mindful of your own emotions. If you're not having a good time, if you're struggling yourself, it's okay to take a step back if you need to take a break. It's okay to vouch for yourself and take a step back from running a program. And it's always great to talk to us. We always are here to support you too.
Yeah. Is that it, Val? Nice. Okay. So everyone, again, we're going to go on now to our second video, which is going to be disruptive behavior. It's a 7 minutes, so this will go fast. Again, use the chat feature if you want to, while you have some pop in your head, type those in, because we're going to look at those too as some of the things you have, so you don't forget what you wanted to ask. We'll see those on there. So just type in anything that pops in your head that you think is important and you want to say. So, okay, Val, let's let her roll.
Hello, and welcome to Handling Disruptive Behavior in NAMI Online Programming. This video defines 3 types of disruptive behaviors that can occur during NAMI online programming and provides program leaders with effective responses for each type of disruption. We strongly recommend that program leaders and producers review this video and discuss how they will respond to these types of behaviors prior to hosting NAMI programming online.
No, we're not getting.
As we discuss these behaviors,
we're not
keep in
getting
mind that all NAMI program leaders and participants must follow.
I'm sorry?
I'm getting your picture. Is everybody getting your picture on here, or is it just me?
I have the video.
You get the video? Okay. It's just me then. I was just kidding. Sorry, Val. I interrupted you. I was just getting your video up there. Okay. Go ahead. My fault. Sorry.
The code of conduct outlined in the most recent NAMI National Education Program's operating policies and procedures. Let's look at the types of disruptive behavior you may encounter and the ways that you, as a program leader, may respond. Disruptive behavior number 1, online trolls. A troll is an individual who has joined the meeting to cause disruption. This is often by exhibiting inflammatory behavior. If you determine that the troll is not supposed to be in your session, go to the Participants panel in your Zoom session. Click the More button next to the name of your disruptive attendee. Next, click Remove at the bottom of the pop-up panel to remove the participant. The best way to keep trolls out is to prevent them from joining in the first place. Zoom's video platform provides you with numerous secure video conference features to ensure your sessions are protected and include only the desired participants. One of the most popular security settings of Zoom meetings is the waiting room feature. To do this, enable the waiting room feature when first scheduling the session. Under Personal Meeting ID settings, click on the waiting room checkbox. This will automatically place all participants in a waiting room before they may join the meeting room as they log in. The producer should confirm that participants in the waiting room have registered and can manually approve them to join the meeting. Don't publish meeting login info in any public format. Instead, email the login information directly to the registered participants shortly before the meeting begins. Limiting access to session login information will prevent trolls from joining and disrupting your session. Let's look at the next possible disruptive behavior we may encounter online: bad technical etiquette. This includes things like not muting when there is noise in the background, creating noise or echoes during the session, participating in a space that is loud and/or not private. Often, a participant may not even be aware that they are causing a disruption. If a participant is causing distracting background noise, the producer should mute the participant to eliminate the distraction. Participants can be muted individually or all at once by using the Mute All button in the Participants panel. Please note, if you mute all, remember to unmute the program leaders so they can continue the session. Inform participants that they are muted and ask them to remain muted and to type any questions into the chat box or raise their hand so they can be unmuted. The participant tools, including the ability to raise their hand, are located on the participant panel. The best way to prevent poor online etiquette from disrupting future meetings is to use the automatically mute all participants upon entry option. When scheduling your next meeting, you have the option to automatically mute all participants upon entry. This will eliminate the need to mute participants during the meeting. Let's look at disruptive behavior number 3, behavior that violates the NAMI Code of Conduct. All NAMI program leaders and participants must always abide by the NAMI Code of Conduct. The NAMI Code of Conduct is found in the most recent National Education Program's operating policies and procedures. Participant behavior that is disrespectful, not empathetic towards other participants, or threatens the safety or well-being of other participants is a violation of the NAMI Code of Conduct and is grounds for removal from the meeting. If you encounter a participant exhibiting disrespectful behavior, remind the group that everyone must abide by the NAMI Code of Conduct. Emphasize that the Code of Conduct requires everyone to be respectful and empathetic. If you are leading a support group, use the group guidelines strategy in the facilitator guide. If the disruptive participant pushes back, you can say something like, "I understand that is your opinion, but we must follow the group guidelines to keep things empathetic and respectful for everybody." What do you do if a participant continues to exhibit disrespectful behavior? If the unwanted behavior continues, the producer should pull the participant and one of the program leaders into a breakout room so that they may speak together privately. While this happens, the other program leader continues to present. If you are using breakout rooms, be sure to enable them before your session. In Zoom, you will find this toggle switch under In Meeting Advanced Settings. Once you switch breakout room on, you will be able to use breakout rooms during your sessions. While in the breakout room, explain to the participant that the behavior that they've exhibited is disrespectful and violates the Code of Conduct. The participant also needs to agree to stop and/or change their behavior before letting them back into the group or class. Next, inform the participant that they will be removed from the meeting if they continue to exhibit the disrespectful behavior. If the behavior continues after the individual breakout discussion, the producer should immediately remove the participant from the session. If this does happen, program leaders should inform their NAMI affiliate or NAMI state organization once the participant is removed. This concludes the content for handling disruptive behavior in NAMI online programming. To help you in these disruptive situations, the NAMI team has provided you with a summary sheet of helpful tips and information included in this video. It is available for download on the same page as the videos.
Okay, there we go. So there's our second video on disruptive behavior. I just want to recap this for you again. They went through the three types of disruptive behavior. One was trolls. The other one was bad technical etiquette, and the other one is violation NAMI Code of Conduct. When we're talking about trolls, we're talking about people, of course, who want to break in, do lewd and lascivious things and cause wreak havoc and cause mayhem in our meetings. The best way around that, of course, is they showed you that if you go to the person's name that's come in and the culprit, you can click more and click remove really quickly. Again, we can show you again. You'll be able to watch this video again online. But the best way is preventative practices by using the waiting room feature that they have, so you can see who's coming in. Never publishing this publicly, so making sure it's sent out to only members and people, or you screen them yourself. your members, they contact you and you can talk to them first. That's a technique I use a lot. So preventative measures will stop a lot of that stuff with the trolling, because they were going around, and when it first started, it was easy pickings for them. They were going around finding people with websites. They were publishing things, joining meetings, and all kinds of things were happening there. So bad technical etiquette. The second one is very, very simple. It's just, you've got somebody that doesn't know to leave their sound off, or their, you're getting disruptive sound, one a very important part of your while you're having your meeting going. And at some point, either they turn it off, or you're going to have to turn it off, shut it off for them, and you have the right to do it as a host. The best thing you can do in the beginning is put on that feature again where when they join the meeting, everybody's on mute to start with. So that's a good feature on that, and that's something you can control too. So the last thing is violating NAMI Code of Conduct. We're all here to support one another, but in the case where somebody isn't doing that, and the things that there's a host of things, and we're gonna again give you all a copy of this, the NAMI Code of Conduct, so you guys can review this in it. It's in all your books. If you go back and look at your training, like family to family, or in facilitator training, it's in those books. But we're going to give you another copy also. But it really is. People don't have empathy, or they're being confrontational, and that's not the right thing we want to have in our meetings. If it's somebody who's they may talk about race in a way that's not appropriate. Someone doesn't feel comfortable, or they're we can have the nicest people in the world, and they have their own religious views, but if they start trying to proselytize on there, that we can't have that. Those are just things we've got to control. And you have a right to, and you owe it to the other people there, with your best judgment, to step forward and confront that. You have to do it, and hopefully you can do it in a less confrontational way, but sometimes that's not always the case. So that's something, by being a facilitator for a while, and experience brings those things to the forefront for you. So that's the wraps this up. I know we've got I went and looked in at some of these questions. I see a lot of really great questions here, and we're going to turn that over where we can talk here for a little bit, whatever time we got left, and we want everybody to have a chance to bring things up. Personally, I want to start with here, and I saw many questions in there. Susan Stout brought one up, and I think it's very, very valid, and a lot of other people agreed with it. When we're worrying about this, collecting people's information, when we're worrying about emergencies, and what if people don't want to share that, maybe don't feel comfortable sharing that, and what do we do in that situation? And I don't know if I have the right answer for that yet. I mean, people have a right to not do that, but it makes us less effective in helping them in a tight situation. But Lisa, do you know anything on that particular one, or Val? What?
So I'll start, and then I'd like to have Val discuss as well. And Paul or Val, if you could shut down the screen share, that would be super helpful.
Yes, the only thing is we still haven't finished the rest of the training yet.
Oh, okay.
And we have
So
to do
I think maybe we wait till the
after.
meeting to discuss this, but asking people for their information for an emergency contact does not make the group not confidential. And there is a balance that we have to have online. I encourage you to ask. It's important to ask, because you don't want to be the support group facilitator who has an emergency, or a program leader who has an emergency erupt in their program and then can't handle it, and it leads to serious physical harm to one of our participants. And so I want everyone to sit for a couple of days with that balance, that we are in an online world. It is not like you are in the same room with someone, and if things get very difficult, that you're there to do something. We are online. And when people are doing things from the comfort of their own home, they have access to different things than they have in a public venue. So I would like everyone to sit with the idea that there is a way to collect information. Don't have to force it. It's voluntary. I would never tell you to kick someone out of a support group because they won't give you their information. But there's a way to ask for that information so that we have it to appropriately respond to an emergency. And we'll talk more about that. And I know Val has a few things to say as well.
So something that NAMI National has recommended, and we just started to do this with NAMI Connecticut, is that when people register to join a support group or anything, that they're asked to just a couple questions ahead of time before they are admitted to join the group. And most of the people that I know have had no problem with just sharing who their trusted person is. It doesn't have to be a family member. It could be a really close friend. It could be your therapist. It could be anybody you identify as a person you feel like you can trust. So when it comes to the emergency contact, my rule of thumb is if somebody is in a mental health crisis, we would never call somebody behind their back. It's like I had mentioned earlier in the training, it's always with the person who's in the crisis directing the conversation. And we talk about this in our QPR training, we talk about it in Assist, that when people are in a serious crisis, they have to create some type of safe plan, keeping them safe for now, as well as finding a way to connect them to hope. So whatever that looks like, we will find a way to connect you to hope. And it's with your best interest in mind. So that's kind of my baseline for that. And we can always talk more about it. But so far, I have not seen any issues. And if someone is unable to identify a safe and trusted person, then we can always continue that conversation and find what works best for them too. So I do want to just complete the remainder of the training portion before we get into the Q&A. So feel free to keep popping questions in the chat and then we'll review them at the very end. Does that sound good, Paul? You're on mute.
Excellent.
Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. Please hold, and we'll finish up. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next section, I do want to preface that this can be a touchy subject. Talking about traumatic loss is pretty emotional. So just putting it out there, if anyone needs to take a step, I ask that you stay with us as much as you can. And if you need to step in a breakout room and talk with anybody on staff here, please feel free to do that. So when we talk about traumatic loss, it means a loss to us. So in general, loss could be loss of income, loss of a connection with somebody, loss of anything. But when we think about with mental health related traumatic loss, that could be a hospitalization, incarceration, and death. During the pandemic, we've seen a lot of loss, and we've had a lot of people come to us in support groups talking about loss and talking about suicide in particular, and talking about loss even due to the coronavirus. So we bring this up because it can be more than a hot potato topic, and it can be a real challenge in support groups. And so defining loss. So we know that a lot of people do experience suicidal thoughts. Not everyone who experiences suicidal thoughts will attempt their life, but there are some people who do. So being prepared as a leader and being prepared as a person who might also have lived experience, it's important to know your limits, and it's important to know how you can handle a situation like this in a group. So if you find out that somebody has died by suicide or has been hospitalized due to a suicide attempt, depending upon the situation, thinking about privacy, if there are people who are questioning if the person is okay, what's going on, if the information is public, you may be authorized to share about a loss. If they have not given consent to share it, then it's not recommended to bring up, the details. But it is always okay to be able to have hold space for talking about grief and loss in a group. And we do have support groups that do address grief and loss, and we can connect you to resources that provide support for people who have lost somebody, especially bereaved by suicide. So thinking about the post-vention response, being able to talk about loss with people, at NAMI Connecticut, we want to find ways that we can support you as a leader, and you should never feel alone when talking about this kind of loss. And if you don't feel equipped to handle addressing it in a group, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always willing to speak to your group or speak to anybody, program leaders, to talk about how to address it in a group. We have resources available through the Connecticut Suicide Advisory Board, and I will share that link after this training as well to connect you to some organizations that do provide additional resources. But when you're talking about loss in a group, it's always good to address the emotions that people are experiencing. Sometimes people start to question themselves. What could I have done? What should I have done? I feel at fault. And that's not a way to talk about loss, and it can drive you completely nuts, for lack of a better word. So talking about honoring the person without glorifying the loss, drawing on your group wisdom to support the emotions. People experience grief, and it's nonlinear, just like having mental health challenges. Recovery is nonlinear. So some days might be better than others. Some other challenges you might notice is that if you have people joining a support group for the first time and you have to address a loss in a group, it can be a little bit triggering or traumatizing. People are coming to groups to talk about their own challenges. So being first and foremost addressing that you're going to be talking about something that might be triggering before the group starts, and letting people know that they can opt out, because you don't want them to feel stuck as they're trying to join a group to talk about their experiences. Another key thing to do as you're running groups and talking about the loss is focusing on self-care. So really honing in on what are you doing to take care of yourself, because the woulda, shoulda, couldas will not help you. And when it comes to traumatic loss, it's never an easy experience, and it doesn't really get that much easier, but we want to be able to provide resources for you to help so it doesn't continue to escalate. So I'm going to turn it over to Iris to talk about how we can also support you. But when it comes to traumatic loss, we do have a grief support manual as well. So if you are interested in learning about more resources that are available, such as the AFSP Healing Conversations, we can definitely connect you as well.
Okay, so I just want to let everybody know, Iris, we're at 10 minutes, so we want to give these people some time here too. So,
Okay.
Iris.
Yep. So basically, like we have offered in the past, we are able, the staff is available to do any personal trainings, or whenever trainings come up, please sign up for them. We also have the document, Val, for the designated representatives.
Yeah, I'm going to send everything out in a second after this.
Okay. So again, please, don't be shy in asking for any one-on-one, whether it's technical issues, whether it's anything that we've talked about in here that we don't cover at the end for Q&A. Anything that we can do to help you along in doing your groups and trainings, just let us know, because we're more than happy to, any one of us, we can get together. We can put together, a mock training or whatever you need. We're available all the time for that. And all the documents, like I stated in the chat, all of the PDFs, everything that we reference to here, Valerie we can send them out to you via email to everybody who was on here today. And like I said, practice, get to know Zoom, and just let us know what you need. That's pretty much it.
Okay, so
Val, there's a question in the chat that I would like you to address around collecting information for support group members, their emergency contact information. I don't want people to think it's a blanket policy that it has to happen in the registration, but I would absolutely like you to give some tips and tell people where in the NAMI emergency response manual they can find suggestions and ideas about how to do that.
So I'm going to be sending out, even in the emergency response resources, information about all of the local crisis like counselors available, information about mobile crisis, the NAMI helpline, any kind of emergency line, and crisis resources. But when it comes to the registration, you can make it optional. You don't have to make it required for people to put in their emergency contact. So when you go to create your next meeting, or if you have an existing meeting, you can click registration required and then have in the registration questions that you want people to answer, but you don't have to make all of the questions required for them to respond to. It is good to have people at least provide their name and maybe the town that they live in or where they're located, just so if they are in a crisis, you can connect them to resources that are local to them. I'm guessing that a lot of you have people that are pretty regular at your groups, maybe not so many new people. And when we get phone calls all the time from for the NAMI staff, we're directing them to the facilitators that are local to them most of the time. So that's a good way to connect them as well.
Okay, so look, there's two ways we can do this. We can just open this up, people can ask questions, or we can actually, all of us click up, Lisa, Val, Iris, we can click this up to chats and answer these people's questions like this.
I just saw one quickly that said, do you have to register every time? You do not. You register once and that's it. So as long as the meeting ID is the same, you will never have to keep re-registering. Also, because if you are an affiliate and you have captured their data once, you don't need to keep recapturing their data. Also, with Zoom, it is very secure and we're not asking any questions that would about diagnosis or anything. So there's no breach related to that too. I wanted to address that as well. What are some other questions that you see?
Well, I mean, I'll do a few and then want somebody else to run off a few, but they were asked, are we going to send this PowerPoint? No, we're not. We're going to put YouTube for anybody who didn't miss it the first time. This is all going to go on YouTube. We're going to send you a link. You're going to actually see, we recorded this one. You're going to actually see this. It's going to go on and you can access as many times as you want. A couple other ones, I'll let some of you guys answer them too. There was one on where do we find these guides and the different things we made reference to here. All these materials, we're going to send them out to you. So we're going to send you copies of all the stuff we referenced to you. The emergency response, NSOs, all that stuff. You're going to get all those things. Let's see. Davina said there's a lot to digest here. Yes, there is, Davina. I agree with you. There's a lot to digest. That's why we put it online so everybody can have as many chances to look at it as they like. Let's see, anything else here? You guys see anything up here you saw that you want to comment on? Go ahead.
I saw about asking about multiple groups. If for every group that you run or have run, we try to ask people to register because not every person will attend every single type of group that your affiliate might run, or like for our young adults, we have like a game night and then we have a regular peer support group. In the emergency response resources, we have national resources as well. So if somebody's coming from out of state, they have national resources. And some of them are outside of the country, but not necessarily available to everybody. But most of our resources available are specific to Connecticut.
I see what I'm not clear on here. It says someone's asked, this seems like it's more a meeting that has consumers, not family members of consumers.
So I'll take that one.
Okay.
You know, people with lived experience with mental health conditions and their loved ones all from time to time could go into crisis. So just because you are dealing with a family member does not mean you will find yourself, or family member groups, whether it's teaching family to family or a family support group or a spousal support group, does not mean you are immune from potential emergency or crisis situations. If someone's family member's behavior is escalating, you could in fact find yourself with a family member who is in crisis. And so it's, I don't want anyone to have a false sense that just because it's a family to family class means there's no potential for a mental health crisis, because that is simply not true.
Val, why don't you ask this? You got Colin Schuster has a question here. Did you see his about the video? He says this video mentions about the facilitator asking a group member about suicidal thoughts and having to ask that question in front of a whole group. My only concern would be that group members might be likely to withhold that kind of information in front of other group members, especially if there are group members that are new and unfamiliar. Val?
So, Colin, that's a great question. And in our young adult groups, we typically, if the person feels comfortable talking about what's going on, we might process as a group. But I also like to privately message somebody and say, hey, do you have a minute to stay after? Or, hey, do you think I can contact, oh, somebody's sharing their screen.
Oh, Beverly.
Anyways, if you are,
She's practicing.
Funny.
there we go. It's always good to ask a person if you can talk to them privately, especially when it comes to the conversation about suicide. We do have people who openly talk about their suicidal thoughts in a support group, and they are asking for group wisdom on how to handle their thoughts. Just because someone is talking about suicide in a group doesn't necessarily mean that they're planning to act on it as well. So that's something to be mindful about as well. But I like to honor people's confidentiality and privacy about certain topics, and we don't want to trigger other people as well. But it's a good conversation to have.
Okay, so we're coming up on the bewitching hour.
We are coming up on the bewitching hour, Paul, but there are two things I want to address, and I'm going to ask Val to address one, and I'm going to give you a minute to think about it while I address the other. Elizabeth had raised a question about accessing emergency contact information while you are subbing in, like if you're not the regular group facilitator. So while you think on that, I'm going to address, there have been a couple of questions about when are we going to have online trainings for support group facilitators or for education programs. So I will take that. We are working with our colleagues in other states to avail ourselves of training opportunities. So if there is a particular class or you want to take, for instance, we're going to start piloting the NAMI peer-to-peer program within the next month, and we are looking to other states to help us with that, because before we can have NAMI peer instructors, we need people here in Connecticut to take the NAMI peer-to-peer class. I can slide people into other state family-to-family teacher training, provided they meet the basic requirements to be trained as a family-to-family teacher, to slide you into support group facilitator training. So if you email Iris, we have access to sort of a loose list of what states offering what when. So I hope that answers your question, Evan. Val.
And wait 1 second. And I also want to mention though, it's really important that whatever information the state office sends out, any emails, that if you please read them, because we did recently have a support group facilitator training and we didn't have many people attend. And it's interesting that we get asked about it a lot, but yet we didn't have a huge class at that time. So again, it's very important that you open all of our emails, because these trainings, if we're trying to get them more frequently, but we can't like Lisa stated, we need people. So thank you.
Okay, I have my answer. So all of the NAMI licenses that are used for support groups are under the NAMI Connecticut license. So if you are subbing in a group, please let Pat know in advance. Please if I'm running, any of the young adult groups are under my personal NAMI license. So if you need to access information when there's an emergency, contact me. The other thing about the designated representative that we were talking about is if there is an emergency going on in a group, it's great to contact the Connecticut office, and we can also support and debrief with you. So that's another thing too. So if you need resources or if you need the information, please contact Pat or me or Iris.
Yes, if an incident happens, we want to know about it right away so we can address it. If you haven't come up with a solution, we want to help.
Okay, well, that's it, I think, folks. We're here, it's 7:02. We started a couple minutes late, so we ask you to be on time, and we'll be on time also today. So we'll follow up with you on this, and please feel free to reach out to us. You'll be getting contact information from us, all the support materials also. And so thank you very much for attending. And Lisa, anything you want to add here?
Sure. I know there are a lot of questions in the chat. Some of you may have felt we didn't get to your question. I see one from Vicky at the bottom. Because we're recording this, we will have access to the chat, and the staff will get to you, each of you who raised a question personally, to make sure that you have received the information that satisfies your question.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.